Hey everybody, welcome to the couch, episode 37, I think. The thing I used to shoot this, I found out just now when I turned it on, had like updated, and now there's a new app or whatever. And part of this super cool update is that I no longer have a preview. Usually I can look down at my phone and I can see what y'all are seeing at the moment, and I can't now, and I feel adrift. I also don't exactly understand how that's an improvement. I feel like life was better yesterday when I had a preview screen. Anyway, I hope you guys had a good week. I had a good week. We watched a live stream on St. Patrick's Day from one of my favorite bands. They're called Flogging Molly. Their singer is Irish, and they did a live stream from a whiskey distillery in Dublin, and it was very cool. And it was just fun to feel. You go to different bands for different things, and one of the things I get from Flogging Molly is just like the pure joy of fandom. Like when I see or hear Flogging Molly, I just get excited and I get really happy. And it's the same thing I get with Tom Petty, where there's the feeling of loving the music, but then there's the feeling of loving kind of the person you are when you hear that music, and having a more joyous, optimistic version of yourself kind of uncovered by this music. So that was great. And I was kind of gonna let the live stream go by, and Tori, my lovely wife, she said, no, let's get tickets. And then we did, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. Other relevant news from last week that we'll talk about, because I feel kind of weird. Mentally and emotionally, not physically. I'm fine. I got my first COVID shot last week, and I got the Moderna one, so I have to go back and get a second one in a few weeks in April. And this is the first I've really talked about it. Some people reached out to me and they said, there are people that I know that are smarter than me and keep a better ear to the ground. And they were very kind enough to look out for me. And I got a couple messages that said, hey, you qualify for the shot right now because of where you do most of your work and that kind of thing. And I wasn't sure. And I wasn't sure that even if I did qualify, that I should qualify, because I was hearing from other people that I thought should be getting the vaccine that they didn't qualify just yet, and that kind of thing. And I was finally convinced because a good friend sent me a couple articles that said that the prevailing idea here is when you can get it, get it. If you're not sure if you should get it, get it. That they really just want everyone to get it. And he convinced me that doing my part did not mean waiting, it meant doing. So I went and I got the shot, and it was great, and I was wildly impressed by the organization behind it, and it was great. I mean, not great, it was a shot in the arm, but my arm felt really sore for a day or two afterwards, kind of like I got whacked with a bat. But that was pretty much what I got. I got kind of the aches and pains and that kind of thing. But it's no big deal. It was worth it for sure. And then I was on the fence about sharing it, because I think there's one spirit in which you could say, hey, I got the vaccine, that is encouraging other people to get their vaccine, and is sort of stripping away some unknown stuff and some fear that people can go like, oh, well, Gold got it and he's fine, and a bunch of people I know got it and they're fine, and but then I know there's a lot of people that are still really suffering, and we have a lot of conversations, it seems, lately around privilege and what that means, and I've heard a lot of different things, most of which I agree with, but a few that I was like, well, that's like a bit of a reach. Because it's also like, if you let that conversation take place in too wide a definition, if you live in America, that's privilege, you know? But I was a little worried that it would seem a little, I don't even know what the word is. There were people out there suffering, wanting this thing that I had. So I felt a little reticent to go, hey, I got it, you know? Fortunately, I have this podcast where we can have sort of longer, I guess technically they're not conversations, though sometimes you guys do respond to stuff and I really enjoy that. But I can sort of explain myself a little bit more and tell people that I did wrestle with whether or not it was proper for me to take the opportunity to get the vaccine. And I did, and I still do wrestle with whether it's the right amount of sensitive to other people's situations to go on Facebook and go, yeah, I got the shot, you know? So yeah, I got the shot, and I felt a little iffy for a day or two, but it wasn't a big deal. And the other reason, I forgot about this, the other reason I didn't sort of shout from the rooftops that I got the shot is I didn't want to contribute to either a spirit of or actual misinformation out there. Like, I've seen a lot of people going, you see a picture of people at a restaurant because they got the shot yesterday. And it's like, everything I've read said that, first of all, you likely will need 2 shots depending on which vaccine you get. And second of all, after the second shot, there's a further period that you have to wait for it to totally take effect. My wife, because of her job, has been fully vaccinated for a little while now. And I think it was a couple weeks that they said after the second shot, you still have to wait a couple weeks before you're fully covered or vaccinated or whatever they would say. And I see a lot of people, and I understand the eagerness to get back out there, but you gotta get back out there safe. And you gotta, you know, let's not fumble it on the 1 yard line here. If I can make a football analogy. I know one of you just rolled your eyes. But I didn't want to contribute to that either. I didn't want to contribute to this attitude of like, I got the shot and then I went right to a bar. Because that's not, you know, that ain't the way of it, as I understand. So, that was that. And I hope when you guys get the opportunity to get the shot, which, based on what I'm reading, everyone will very soon. I hope you guys get it, and I hope you have a pretty easy time with it. And I hope if you have a hard time with it, you can try to remain in good spirits, knowing that it won't last very long, and it won't be nearly as bad as having COVID. So, get them shots. And who doesn't love doing shots on a weekday afternoon? Bigger, better, more fun news. Oh my gosh. So, like a month or two ago, I was talking about this band Idlewild from Scotland, who I love and have loved my entire adult life. And they were never really a big hit in America, so their stuff is harder to come by, and you either have to track it down or you just have to pay for it on import, and that can be a little spendy, but I love this band and it's worth it. They put out a book celebrating the 25-year history of the band, and it was real expensive because you had to pay to get it shipped over from Scotland and the conversion rate, and it ended up being like $60. And I decided, like, it's pandemic, I'm not going to do that. And I talked about it on the podcast, sincerely talking about how it was a good opportunity to just kind of be thankful for what I had and not let myself feel disappointed or as if I had been treated unfairly by a universe that does not consider me at all to begin with. But a very nice gentleman named Mark, he sent me a message saying he had really enjoyed the podcast and he had really enjoyed my music and he wanted to say thanks. And he sent me some money via Venmo. Thank you to all of you that do that. That really means a ton to me and is very helpful. But this particular money had a very specific note that said, get the book. And I think we have a responsibility to do what people want us to do when they gift us something. If they say like, hey, use this to pay a bill or whatever, like pay the bill. But if they say get the book, well, god dang, look at it. It's here. Thank you again to Mark. I'm almost finished with it. I've had it for a week, and I'm going through it, and every time they get to one of their records, I stop reading and I listen to the record, and it's been so fun, and I love it. I love it. And I'm getting a lot out of it personally, not just my love for this band and their story, but it's so nice and thick and heavy, and I love it. Because they're Scottish and we're never a huge band, there's not a ton of press about them, and there's not a ton to read about them and that kind of thing. And to read in their own story, in their own words, it's sort of revealed that like they spent at least the first half of their career, if not a little bit longer, sort of being told what the expectation should be and what their ambition should be. And then the band would say, okay, and they would try to go for that. And time again, it kind of didn't work out that way because they weren't that kind of band. They would go out on tour with Coldplay or Pearl Jam and be told like, you should be like Coldplay, you should be like Pearl Jam, you should be huge. And they would say, okay, and then they wouldn't be, and they would feel disappointed. And I'm at this point in the book where it's starting to turn, and they're realizing those expectations and those standards and those wants and those desires are someone else's. They're realizing, we want to be this kind of band. We want to be like a respected indie band that has a little crowd that supports us, and we want to make good music, and we don't want to deal with the pressures and the expectation and stuff like that. And I think that's really beautiful. And it's something, it's kind of where my head has been at this last year, sort of thinking about all the ambitions that I had just because I was doing this kind of Mad Lib of like, if you are a musician, then you want to play these kind of shows, and you want to get this kind of deal, and you want to work with these people, and you want to do this, and you want to be friends with these people, and you want people to think of you like this, and all this stuff. And having had a full year now of COVID living, to not be that, to not be anything really, to just kind of sit in my house and be Christopher Gold and try to figure out if I get along with that guy, and try to figure out if our ambition is the same. I'm realizing like, I don't know if I want to do a lot of the things. I want to write songs, and I want to make this podcast, and I want to, play shows and tell stories and tell jokes and make records and that kind of thing. I don't want to go to meetings, and I don't want to change for other people, and I don't want to be forever obsessed with bigger, more, next, and I realized that there were things happening in the pandemic that had probably been happening to me the whole time. And in the pandemic, they felt like successes. And in the real world, they would have felt like failures. And those things were, if one person reached out to me during the pandemic and said, hey, that song you shared yesterday, it really mattered to me, and it really meant something to me. That was huge. But if I played a show in the real world and only one person was paying attention, I would feel like it was a bad show and I had failed and I wasn't good. And you mix that with all the pressure to like fit in with these people, these other musicians, and to wonder like, should I post that or should I not post that? Should I say that? Should I not say that? What will people think of this song instead of what do I think of this song? And I've been thinking about all that and talking to people I care about, and talking to my wife, and having this really long conversation with my dad, and realizing that like, I like where I'm at. I would like for it to grow. I would love if 1,000 people watch this podcast. I would love it if 10,000 people bought my next record, but I still want it to be this podcast and my record. And if there aren't 1,000 people that can hang with whatever this podcast is, then it's not going to change just so I can get more people. And if there aren't 10,000 people that like whatever the next record I make is, you know, I've met musicians that like can tell you why they're dressed the way they're dressed. They say people react better when I wear the hat. And I just go, oh. Not in a judgmental way, like, good for you. If that's your road to walk, then by all means, but I'll see you later. Like, that sounds, I want to make things, and I want to hopefully connect with people, and I would be happy to connect with a lot of people, and I would be happy to play for a lot of people and share this podcast with a lot of people. But where my happiness is now is just sort of stopping to celebrate. Man, every week 50 people listen to this podcast. And that's not a lot to a lot of people. But when I consider like how much of myself I put into this podcast and reveal in this podcast, and think that for 37 weeks, 50 people have seen value in that, and they've supported it financially, and they've reached out to me privately and told me what it meant to them, that's huge. And I don't want to step back on a hamster wheel that is set up to make me think that it's not huge, that's set up to make me look at other podcasts and go, well, that podcast gets 1,000 views a week, or, you know, so-and-so told me their record sold 500 copies on release day and mine sold 5, you know, but those 5 people loved that record. A friend of mine, and I don't know if he watches this, and I didn't really tell him, a friend of mine told me that my instrumental record was his favorite album of the year. And I felt a serious feeling about that. And that was just one person that I know personally, but they loved something I made and they connected with something I made. And that felt good and important and worth. It feels good enough that I know in my heart it's worth turning away from anything that would try to diminish that. No, that said, I still have ambition. I release songs because I think that they're good and I believe in them. And I would love it if 1 million people bought my next record. You know what I mean? That'd be really good for the guitar collection if 1 million people bought my record. But am I going to dress different? Am I going to... You know, I've had people say, like, you should make this song less specific. And I'm going, but it's my song. And people tell me that when they do connect with my songs, it is the specificity. It is, you know, and there's still people that connect with my songs in ways that I didn't intend for them to. But that's great too, you know? I think a lot about, in my previous life, whatever that was, my early days, I thought that contentment was the enemy of ambition, and that contentment was going to make you stagnant. And the only reason Springsteen made a next record is because he convinced himself that Born to Run wasn't as good as everybody thought it was and he could do better. And now I'm realizing, like, maybe being content and celebrating where you are and what you have is what gives you the sure footing to keep going. And maybe you follow up Born to Run because of how good it felt to make Born to Run. And you go, let's make another one. Let's make one as good. Let's have the guts to try to make one better. And also I'm trying to remember that no matter what happens with this podcast or with my music or my writing or my whatever, this is my life. And I don't want to spend the whole thing obsessed with progress and the climb and that kind of thing. And the more I let go of that and the more I turn away from that and the farther I get from that, the better I feel. And I think it makes my output better. I think it makes the podcast better. I think it makes my ideas better. I put out a book of lyrics I had written, and I was terrified because I thought it was pretentious and I thought people wouldn't like it, but I kept coming back to, I really want to though. I keep wanting to do this. And I did it and people liked it. And it felt really good. And now it's got me wondering, what else am I not doing? Because I'm afraid and uncomfortable that people would like. And a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is in that category. Talking like this is in that category. Making peace with the fact that you have ambition, but you also want to be satisfied and content falls in that category. Talking openly and honestly about feeling like you don't fit in with a lot of your peers is in that category. But I feel good. Things are going good. And I really appreciate you all being here and watching this podcast and listening to my music and telling people. It means a ton to me. And all the support, either by word of mouth or financially or whatever, is huge and has eased my mind in tough times and has made it a little bit easier to continue down this road that I think hopefully I will find some good stuff along the side of. Let's have some coffee. My goodness gracious, he just went on for ages, didn't he? So I have a song for you today. It's called Girls in Their Dresses. It's from a record of mine called Whichever Way Home that has an impending 5-year anniversary, which feels significant to me because Whichever Way Home is the first record I made that to this day I feel happy knowing that people are listening to it and don't wish I could go back and like, I would love to change that. I'd love to change the way I sang that. I would love to fix that guitar part. I love that record. From the songs to the production to the artwork. I love it. And I'm excited I have some ideas to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of that record that we'll talk about later. But this song is on there. It was the second song on the record. It's called Girls in Their Dresses. People liked it, which is cool. But the song itself is about being in a backstage room and feeling out of place and uncomfortable and miserable. Because often backstage rooms are very treacherous places, and you're just trying to get a free beer and maybe some salsa, and everyone else is trying to network. And it's gross. Or maybe it's not. I shouldn't be judgmental of it, but I am. But the funnier story about this song is me and my guys, we found ourselves on this show. And we didn't know this when we took the show, and we would have taken it anyways. But we get there, and we found out there were 4 bands on the bill, including us. And we were going to be second or third, I think. And the other 3 were cover bands. And in fact, one of them had been on a TV show, like a singing contest show. And that's cool, whatever. It's an experience. We were happy to be there. It comes to be our turn to sound check, and we played this song. And afterwards, the guitar player for one of the bands came up to me and he goes, "Man, that was great." And I said, "Oh, thanks, man." He said, "What was that?" And I said, "Oh, it's called Girls in Their Dresses." And he goes, "Where's it from?" And I went, it's on our new record." And he went, "No, but like, where did you hear it?" And I said, "I wrote it." And he goes, "No, but like, who did it first?" And this went on for like a full minute. And I couldn't explain to him that I had sat down and where once there was nothing, I had made this song appear. I had ripped it out of the ether into this world. And I finally had to say, like, I sat down and I wrote it down. It was in my head and I wrote it down. And he goes, "Oh, so like it's your song." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's awesome, dude." And he was a super nice guy and he was a sweet guy. And I don't go for any of that, like, I play original music and you play cover music, so let's fight. I don't care. The fact is, most people in cover bands are more talented musicians than me. The difference is I don't view myself as a musician. I view myself as a writer. I'd like to view myself as a writer anyways, or as someone who makes things. And it was just really funny that this like real sweetheart of a dude just couldn't like get his mind around like, but who made it first? Who did it first? Where did you first hear it? So this song's called Girls in Their Dresses, and that story makes me smile. And he was a real nice guy, and he was a hell of a guitar player. So here we go. I'm staring at the air between us, wondering about the bruises on your limbs. I wonder what I'm smelling on your breath. I wonder if I could get a cup of it. Girls in their dresses, they complain about the cold, all dolled up for something they can't tell me what for. So when I think they won't notice, I head for the door. I'm staring at the air between us, wondering how fast I could get back home. I count each mile as a minute, and I pray to something that it don't snow. The voice on the speaker sings an old familiar song. I learn it as I go, singing every word wrong. So by the time I've got it down, I'm 20 miles gone. I'm staring at the air between us, wondering about the bruises on your limbs. I wonder what I'm smelling on your breath. I wonder if I could get a cup of it. Girls in their dresses are also busy looking bored, wearing out their far-off stares. They've seen it all before. So when I think they won't notice, I head for the door. All right. That was fun. I wrote that song. I know you can't tell because the Rolling Stones used that riff 800 times before I did, but the words, I wrote them. All right, let's do some recommendations, get you out of here. Let's talk about some rock and roll, some punk rock, some rock and roll. Let's talk about Social Distortion. This record is called Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll. There are no words to explain how important this band is to me and how much this record means to me. I have 2 Social Distortion tattoos. I got married in part because of this record. And in fact, one of the songs from this record was featured in the ceremony. As my bestest friend and I walked back down the aisle, it was to the song Highway 101 by Social Distortion from the album Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll. This is them, I think, kind of completing the transition from punk band to great American rock and roll band. And they had always had that in them. They were always as influenced by the Stones as they were the Ramones. But this one, it's so good. And Mike Ness and Johnny Two Bags combined to have my favorite all-time guitar tone. I think this record sounds perfect. I think the songs are incredible, and I owe a lot to this band and to this record, and you should listen to Highway 101, and you can make pretend like you were at our wedding. So there's that. Up next we have Trampled by Turtles. This record is called Life is Good on the Open Road. And it's a great record by a great band from Minnesota. They play bluegrass. In the past, they were known for playing it incredibly fast. I heard people call it thrash grass, which I liked. But on this record, I think this is their most recent record, things slowed down a little bit, which I think really benefits them because they write great songs. And there's a song in here called Annihilate, where he says, there's a man up on the hill. He doesn't know you. He doesn't love you. He never will. And that pretty much sums up my political thoughts. But also, there's a song on here that you should check out called Thank You, John Steinbeck. And in the song, he just says, travels with Charlie under my arm. And I didn't know what that meant. So I Googled Travels with Charlie. And what it means is this book by John Steinbeck called Travels with Charlie, In Search of America. And I read that it was the probably mostly true story of John Steinbeck and his dog Charlie driving across the country and meeting people and learning what they had in common with the people of this country rather than what they didn't. And that appealed to me a great deal. And I had a trip coming up. I had the last big run of shows I did was in November, I believe, of 2019. I did 5 shows in 5 days in 4 states. I went Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, and then 2 up in the north part of Wisconsin, and then back home. And I did the first 3 days of that, the Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois bit by myself, and then I picked up Tori and Ollie on the way up north. So I spent a lot of time when I wasn't in record stores, because most of the drives were only 3 or 4 hours, so I had a lot of downtime. I would sit in coffee shops and I would read this book, and it was incredible, and I loved it, and it was not lost on me that a bunch of strangers would say oh, Travels with Charlie, great book. And I would have a little chat with them. And I thought that's kind of what Steinbeck was on about in this book, and it made me love good music so much more. I've said before, there's plenty of space for kind of throwaway, fun pop music. But there's so much to be said about good, thoughtful music that a good record will open you up to other records and books and movies and instruments and all kinds of stuff. So I'm a huge Trampled by Turtles fan, and I'm forever thankful to them for giving me this book, which I bought used because I love used books. I like when you get a used book and it has a note to someone else in it. I like that. That's it. I feel like I talked really fast for an hour, but it's only been 33 minutes. I hope this worked because I don't have a preview screen. I hope I look okay because I don't have a preview screen. But it feels like, God already had a say in that department, and this is what we get. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast and the songs. I enjoyed spending time with you. I hope you get your shots. I hope you keep trying to move forward, but I hope you enjoy your lives, and I hope you are content and ambitious, because I've recently been made to think that you can be. That's it. Get a shot when you can get a shot, and we'll talk more coming up here about the 5-year anniversary of Whichever Way Home and some hopefully fun stuff we can do that is safe and apart but together, just like this podcast. That's it. Go listen to Social D. Love ya. Bye.